for decades after the film we're talking about today coming out, people have approached Glenn Close and said, "Thank you, you saved my marriage." What film is that? Hook. Wait, no, we're not talking Hook. Okay.
It's not Hook.
We're talking about Fatal Attraction, another erotic thriller from Adrian Lin, coming at you live, Saving Marriages. Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
Hi, I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching. And for our loyal fans, sincerely, thank you for continuing to support the show. You can follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram. You can post us questions there. You can look. We do have a Patreon. Check that out for some great deals to tell us some movies to do, as well as we have submitted some other interests. We submitted the intros.
Oh yeah,
intros.
We got our top five opening scenes, which was posted for our September videos. Yeah.
Also, Kyle and I are members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out that webpage for critics' reviews as well as ours. And we're going to talk about a staple from 1987, and I guarantee you is the most talked about movie of 1987. It is Fatal Attraction.
Yeah, so when married man Dan Gallagher has a one-night stand with work colleague Alex, his deception seems to put him in the clear as his wife is none the wiser. But when Alex learns that Dan has no plans to leave his wife and family, she will not be ignored and devises a plan to win him back by any means necessary.
So I felt it's necessary to talk about this film because in previous episodes we talked about Jade, we talked about Last Seduction, we talked about Body Evidence and stuff like that, as well as Michael Douglas after this would do a lot of other erotic fillers. He would do like Disclosure, of course the kind of the core Basic Instinct, but this is probably the start of those erotic thrillers is Fatal Attraction. It didn't get a lot of good reviews at the time. Roger Ebert, I think if I remember, felt like he was cheated at the end. And I'm going to talk about my critique of it is actually it fits for the time. I think people appreciate it now. But the whole gimmick was married couples will go see this movies as an enticement. Like, look what happened if you're going to cheat on me. You're going to get an Alex. And then she's going to like, I'm pregnant, Dan. And don't ever buy a pet rabbit. Right.
Yeah. Well, when you talked about doing this movie for this month in October, I was like, it's not really horror. But then as I watched it, I was like, this is exactly the kind of horror that like, slasher films have. If you have sex prematurely, if you smoke weed, if you're a bad person, you're going to have something bad happen to you.
Right.
And so it's one of those things you have to know beforehand what kind of film this is going to be, because Michael Douglas cheats on his wife. Sounds like a great movie. But then you realize like, oh, he's going to pay. He's really going to pay.
Right. So it's grounded in, and my critic analysis is, and I think everybody missed a boat when they watched this movie, it's not an erotic filler. It is a horror movie, but it's not the horror things that we talked about because she is a psychopath.
Yeah.
She's a murdering psychopath, but you don't see the knife out in the woods like Jason or anything. And I think people missed the boat at the time because that, in 87, was everywhere.
Yep.
And I think we got so washed and so consumed about slasher movies, we forget the increments and stuff that we can incorporate. This is a slasher movie, but we subtract all the bloods and guts and gore and teenagers. It's adults, right? And she's, of course, a maniac psychopath, but she doesn't. It's sold as this erotic thing for adults to film.
Yeah.
Right.
One thing I appreciate. Oh, sorry.
One for me, it is a horror movie, and I think people missed a boat on that.
Oh yeah. One thing I really appreciated about the film was finding out that Glenn Close, before she took the role, approached two psychiatrists that she had known and actually asked them about the screenplay and said, would this character do this and why? And she went through the entire screenplay with them. Would this character do this? Is it realistic? And why would they do it? Right. And actually got some understanding from the psychiatrist that looking at the character profile for Alex, they saw trauma, they saw molestation, they saw rape, they saw torture, they saw a lot of childhood trauma around sex. So that way, in that way that she is, if she is told no, if she is given emotional strain due to a sex act, that it's going to cause her to break. And I think, because watching the film, I was like, it feels a little cliche to like...
It feels a little bit off-center, like all of a sudden she's going off the...
the crazy mistress kind of thing. But then reading about that afterwards, I was like, it's a lot. There's a lot happening. But I do kind of understand what they're going for from a writing perspective. The turn is a bit much. The only thing I think is weird is they say that she's an editor for a book publisher, right?
Yeah.
I know editors. That is a busy job. I don't have enough time to stalk someone and do book editing. It's a lot of work. So like when you see how much work goes into stalking this guy and making his life a living hell, she had to have lost her job. I would have liked to have seen a couple of scenes with that.
What did you edit? Right. So
what did you get done this week?
It's directed by Adrian Lyne. This is another reason why I want to talk about it, because we did Jacob's Ladder, which is a horror movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it is a horror movie. But also is written by James Dearden. I don't think the writing is the marquee of the movie. I think you probably, if you see the script, you probably think of some other things.
And yet it was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay.
For adapted screenplay, right. I don't think the editing is the marquee of this. What you're selling is the chemistry of Michael Douglas and Glenn Close.
You're doing this on purpose. You know this movie was nominated for Best Film Editing, right?
Right. I think because everybody missed the boat. They're trying to tell you what this movie is, and they didn't understand. It is a horror movie, an 80s typical slasher horror movie. It just doesn't have teenagers at the camp. It's adults.
And it almost feels like people are harsher on the film because they can't give it a horror label. Because, you know, like, the snooty people are going to be like, well, horror is going to be like that. You know, it's just, it's drivel, right? But then, like, they look at this film and they're like, you know, kind of denigrating it because it doesn't fall under the trappings of horror. Because there's a lot of things in there that I don't know if I buy in a realistic movie, but it's played to the nth degree, because that's what Adrian Lyne does pretty well, is he ratchets up that insanity level. And he does it very slowly.
Even the party seems like you don't want to be there because there's so many, you know, it's condensed and compressed. And you're like, oh, God. Even during COVID, after we did COVID, I was like, get the hell out of there. Right. Because everything doesn't seem pleasant. The only time anything seems pleasant is before it goes off the rails is Alex and Dan having their affair. Yep. They're actually enjoying their company.
Yeah, there's a chemistry level there. And Adrian Lyne has directed a lot of sex in his time. He did say that, like, his goal when he's doing sex scenes is to add elements of fun, to do things like somebody accidentally slipping on something, or and make the actors laugh, because if they're having fun, and if you make the actors think that what they're doing is really hot, that's what he had said, that if you do that, they're going to get into it more. And it's like, yeah, there was some, like, I saw some chemistry
in the kitchen,
play.
but he shoots it enough though you don't really see anything, but he's got his pants are on his ankles and he's carrying Glenn.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just one of those reasons I will never eat at his home.
And it's what I like, and I'm going to say the writing's not oppressive because the dialogue is just, I'm not going to be ignored, Dan, right? That's kind of throwaway, but she sells it good enough. But what is convincing enough is the contrast is what's pleasant is their thing is not supposed to be, right? That's the enjoyment. She's selling the freedom, all the things he can do, he can't do with the family, right? And he ignores, almost the beginning, he ignores his son and the dog and everything until after, oh my God, the dog has to go outside. Now he cares. Yep. Right. I also was sold about this from a pastor telling me that it was the wife that didn't ignore Dan, and that's what happened. That's why he strayed. Like, it's somehow her responsibility. Ann Archer's character. Oh, yeah. Pretty much she's being a mom. She's not being a wife. She's being a mom all the time, not being a wife. The pastor, because that's a totally male point of view of this movie.
I have a friend from high school who is very much like a Dan. And I'm not going to say who you are, but you know who you are if you're watching. This is the kind of guy that he had this great girl that was interested in him, but he couldn't find himself dating her because he was interested in someone he couldn't have. And that's Dan in a nutshell. Dan has a great life. He's got a beautiful wife. He's got kids. Apartment. He's got dogs. Their argument is over getting a rabbit. Like, that's the toughest thing they got going on right now. And so he sees temptation. He sees something he can't have. And he says, I want that because I can't have it. Because you won't let me have it. And that's why he strays. And it's so frustrating because most of the people that do that are ones that don't realize how good they have it. We've seen in the news, actually, just recently, a bunch of big-name celebrities who have come out and found out that they were cheating and they had perfect lives at home, and yet they continually push themselves out into that ether.
But he shows Adrian shows the fun of having an affair.
That's the thing, too, is Adrian Lyne makes you...
It's almost like Scorsese. Shows you how fun it is to be a gangster before it's time to pay the consequences.
It's fun to be bad when you're being bad. Yeah. But when you don't want to be bad anymore, then it gets really bad.
Then it gets bad, because then she's auditioning to be the babysitter.
Oh, which is a great... I love that. Shows up to buy the home. Oh, my God.
To buy the home, right.
The tension building across 2 hours. I do think the movie's a little too long. But the tension building across 2 hours... is that little ratcheting sense of everything getting a little bit worse the whole time.
Right, yeah. So you have what I think is not sold right. I think it's the gimmick. The one the whole point of the erotic thriller. Mm-hmm. But you have temperaments of what we saw in the 80s every time was a slasher horror movie. Yeah. And you can't sell a horror movie to married couples to go see this movie.
Yeah.
But you have to sprinkle little elements of that in it. I still regard this as a horror movie.
But Lynn does that too, though, with Jacob's Ladder. It's not a traditional horror. And today, if Jacob's Ladder or if this movie came out, we would call them elevated horror. Like they'd kind of get that other title to them, even though it's all like horror if it horrifies you, and there are elements to both that do.
Also, before we get to our review, I'm kind of talking about it, but cinematographer Howard Atherton, he also did Black Rain starring Michael Douglas with Ridley Scott. Another movie. If you haven't seen Black Rain, check it out. It's Michael Douglas being a cop, and he goes bad. He started wearing sunglasses and motorcycles and kicking ass. But Howard did the cinematography for that movie.
It's like every Michael Douglas movie is him doing bad.
So 87, this is Michael Douglas being a breakout year because he would do Wall Street and this movie, probably the most talked about movies of that era.
Oh, yeah.
Wall Street and this movie. You could talk Untouchables probably as well in the mix as Kevin Costner. But this is the year that Michael Douglas kind of does his character.
Oh, yeah, because Wall Street is still talked about. It was shown in my college classes for film, was Wall Street. Fatal Attraction, before I even went looking for it, we watched it on HBO Max. Before I went looking for it on HBO Max, it was on the list of things that were suggested to me. Okay. So, like, it was already kind of even being suggested. Yeah. You know, like, they knew that this movie still had some chutzpah to it, but he was filming them back and forth. It was either every other day or every other week where he'd, like, go back and film scenes for the other one. But it takes a performance like Michael Douglas to sell you on being bad is good until it's not.
Because he can do both. He can be the doughy nice guy, but also the vicious maniac villain, Scrooge, rich guy, like he does in the game.
Yeah.
And you don't get the movie Game without this movie or Wall Street. So, also, I want to talk, there's two editors. You have Spielberg's editor, Michael Kahn, but then you have Peter Berger, who did Hocus Pocus in 88 minutes. I think this is probably Peter Berg and then Michael Kahn going back and cleaning it up a little bit.
Probably.
Because this almost looks like a Spielberg movie, the way it's shot and the action, the tension. I would see a lot of emphasis as looking like a Spielberg movie. I would say this is very much Adrian Lyne.
Yeah.
Definitely, but you see fingerprints of importance of Spielberg, how do you keep motion tensions even when there's nothing left going on.
Michael Kahn constructs scenes really well.
Yes.
Like that's, I mean, better than anything else on his resume. He's great at a lot of things. He constructs scenes where, like, every shot plays off the previous shot. And I saw a lot of that in this film, so much so that I was not surprised to see his name as an editor when I looked at the credits. So
right. Just put the bunny on the ground and you're like, the bunny! It's just putting the bunny on there. Right.
Yep.
I don't know. Would this be required viewing for your film class?
Required would be tough because I don't know if I have time for more than one erotic thriller, and I'd probably put Basic Instinct in there. But, you know, like as a teacher, I don't want to be showing all the erotic thrillers. But what's interesting about this film is that so many of the elements played off of each other very well.
Yeah.
You know, because Glenn Close only works if the screenplay gives her something to do. Same thing with Michael Douglas, same thing with the editing. The editing only works because the two performers are so dynamic. You know, everything about it is built and constructed in a way where the goodness of it all feeds itself. It's a self-feeding film. Because there are elements that don't work in it, but they're on the tertiary end. They're on the edge of it, where it's like, you miss them, it doesn't matter. You know?
The subplot of them having the, Stuart Pumpkin and everything.
Yeah,
it's
like,
just throwaway.
You know, all that kind of stuff. It's like, it's there, I don't need it. It's not that important to the plot line. It's only there, I think, to serve building Michael Douglas's character, showing who he is when he is a family man, so that we hate him when he's not. And then that we also the forgiveness level of us as viewers is really tough because he did a horrible thing and he deserves to suffer for it, but not at the expense of his family. Right. You know, it's a very nuanced and difficult way to break a character. You know. And
I would say the nominations for editing,
Best Picture, Best Director, Best Lead Role for Close, Best Supporting Role for Archer, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Film Editing. So.
And I think a lot of those are just not emphasizing what they want to see and rather what it is. And so you're having what they think they're seeing in the writing, which generally I don't think you see. If you look back now, you're like, why is this nominated for writing?
Well, I was shocked at all of it, like as far as nominations, because like it doesn't seem like the kind of film the Academy would embrace more than anything else. I was surprised to see any of it nominated. I was, thankful for certain elements. I think Close is great, and I think Anne Archer
Yeah.
has not had a lot of film roles in her career. You know, her recently.
But this is the reason why
Sunny, you know,
This is the reason. Ann Archer is the reason why in this movie is the reason why she's in Body Benefits.
Yeah,
yeah.
But it's shocking to me that any of it got attention because there's a lot of great elements to it. But again, the screenplay only got nominated in my mind because it had great performers and it was supported by the great editing. It's like I said, that's why we see films that get 14 nominations.
I mean, if you sit there and I'm not going to be ignored, Dan. You just put that in. But how she says it in the movie makes it right.
Yeah,
it's
me knowing that that's going to happen. Because I knew that line of dialogue existed in the world of erotic thrillers, but when she says it, it kind of caught me off guard. Like, wait, this is the scene where she says, like, I had whiplash as a viewer.
Or the scene of, the famous scene of Michael Duff. Just cut it!
Yeah. Yeah.
which is now mean for the film, Just cut it!
Oh, yeah.
Cut it, Alex! Which is, you're right, it doesn't seem like how... Right.
And then just little elements to the screenplay supported by other elements, especially in the editing. When she talks about having met Dan a few weeks ago at the party, and then we realize that she's probably lying about the pregnancy because a few weeks is not enough time. Like having those bits and pieces building the character. It's almost like the screenplay does a great job of not telling you everything, but letting you as a viewer suss out what all those elements mean and being able to make your own arguments for it.
Right.
So
overall, I think it's very important footnote in history. I think a lot of people missed the boat of what it was naturally and critiqued it what they wanted it to be. I don't think it's a erotic filler. I think it's a very hidden horror movie.
I think it's both.
Yeah.
I think it's
You
both,
can do both.
and a couple of other weird things too. It's a weird movie.
Right.
Because it almost doesn't feel like you could pull that off. And Adrian Lyne is known for making films that shouldn't work. I'll tell you again and again, I don't think Jacob's Ladder as a movie should work for me because there's so many things about it that I would normally be frustrated by in a movie like that. But Adrian Lyne pulls it off.
Right. And it's the chemistry of Michael Douglas. It's the performances that really are the star of the movie.
Yep.
I really think so. And I think you crafted... If you didn't have Michael Kahn, I don't know what kind of movie you would have. But he's the perfect match for the kind of edit this movie, but to build constant tension and construct it where you have constant, like, what the heck? Oh, you see her. You see her. There she is in the background. So you have this play, which you almost feel participant, as well as I'm seeing things as a viewer. Maybe I shouldn't be seeing this scene.
I'm not supposed to be.
I'm not supposed to be. But you have that increment of very much, we're the voyeurs, right?
Yep.
Right. But this was always the movie that married couples will go see this movie and like see what's going to happen to you.
Yeah, but you want to look at the couples that are watching it from the back and just see which one turns to the other one. You know what this means, and then go back.
But this, I think this movie fits the timing. Film is always about timing. Really.
Oh yeah, great movies come out in the wrong time.
Perfect for '87. Perfect for what we're talking about. Perfect for if you want to know what '87 is all about, it was this movie. We have all of this. '87 we were talking about the country is in a moral crisis, and this movie comes out at the same time, right? And we have the Reagan
this little country of people is in a moral crisis too.
Moral crisis in this movie talked about,
One thing I will say, the things that frustrated me about the film more than anything were these little swatches of. I wish, like I joked about it earlier, I do wish we could have seen Glenn Close at work. So that we could have gotten maybe...
cut out Stuart Penn.
That's the thing, is like, because they used that time to develop Douglas, I think that sacrifices time with Close. Because she does make a pretty aggressive heel turn from someone that we met in the first couple minutes. I wanted to see her at work so we could see what she looks like day to day. Right. And I also want to see her as a character, like, plotting these things and being like this. Because it almost makes her otherworldly when she shows up in the film, because you're like, how is she figuring all this stuff out? Show me a scene of her actually like stalking him.
Rather than just being an empty vessel that all of a sudden you ignore me, now I'm mad and I'm going to go.
Because there were times when she did feel like Jason standing outside with the knife because we didn't get a lot of time to see how does she figure this stuff out. And that kind of comes into the writer of the film, which was James Dearden, who wrote this based on a short film, a British short film from 1980 called Diversion. And it's like you can see the short film expansion there where he had to choose what things to expand upon. And I would have liked to have seen more of that because I think it would have added more to the overall experience of understanding Alex.
Right. If you had a little bit of time of Alex on her own, rather than have Michael Douglas on his own.
Yeah.
Or I don't care about his friends. I don't think he cares about his friends.
I think there's easier ways to develop his character than showing his relationship with friends.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, right, it deserved a lot of the nominations, but I think a lot of the nominations were what they wanted the movie to be, and they didn't really see it that way. And I think it's funny to read the critics how angry they were about this movie not doing what they thought it was going to do.
And then go ahead and giving it a bunch of noms anyway. So,
Right, yeah.
Well, I enjoyed it more than anything. Yeah. I really dug it. So.
Have you seen Fatal Attraction? My God, if you were in the 80s, you saw this movie.
Yeah, especially if you've seen any Adrian Lyne film. You've probably seen just enough sex to make you be able to see this movie, too.
Right.
So let us know your thoughts on this film in the pantheon of Adrian Lyne. What's your favorite film? Is it Fatal Attraction? Is it Jacob's Ladder? Is it Flashdance? Maybe there's a couple of you out there. I know there's
got to be a few out there Flashdance, but I'm a Jacob's Ladder dude.
Yeah, so let us know down in the comments below what you thought about the film and maybe a future Adrian Lyne film. Because, hey, we already got 2. We got to get a 3rd. And while you're down there, please like and subscribe. They're 2 free things.
Yes, please do.
Support us in that way. We do appreciate it. And on the Patreon. Links down in the description. Thank you guys for joining us. You can find all my film reviews over at goatfilmreviews.com.
You can find my podcast, St. Paul Filmcast, and you can check out the latest episode where I interview Andrew Hunt to talk about his new release movie from Paramount Pictures, The Infernal Machine.